Hey everyone. I just wanted to make this live stream about some of the upcoming changes for this channel. There won't be anything extreme, but I will be shifting my focus a little bit. I've been testing the waters with this channel, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and I've got a good flavor for that a little bit, at least at preliminary stages. I've found that if I give certain types of information, especially if it's a little bit more complicated or more at the tip of the spear, so to speak, it seems to lead to certain types of confusion. And I think the reason for that is because this type of information is difficult to understand. It's difficult to understand because you have to really experience these things for yourself. For most people, when they hear things, they're going to intellectualize it. And intellectualization versus direct experience, they are congruent to some extent, but at a certain point, theory only goes so far. So what I'm going to do is, with some of these future videos, I'm going to give more of a direct approach. Instead of explaining things from an intellectual basis, which is what most people do and most channels do, I'm going to start giving direct practices in terms of what works. For those who have seen my videos, they will remember or recall that there are two types of things we're looking for with the psychology of awakening. The first one is correct knowledge, and the second one is correct practice. These are the only two things that you need in order to realize awakening for yourself and find freedom from psychological suffering. Now, how you actually do these things, how you actually attain correct knowledge and correct practice, that is a lot more difficult than just going and watching videos or reading books. What I have found in my experience is that what you do in terms of your behavior and practice influences what you know. And there is a bit of a cyclical relationship there. However, the practice part, in my opinion, should come first. Because if you have knowledge but not practice, you have the theory but not the experience. If you go the other way around, you have the experience but not the knowledge, you will have everything you need. It's just putting a label onto your experience. That's where more of the knowledge piece comes in. In other words, if you just directly engage in practice, you will get the raw and core experiences in terms of what you need for the psychology of awakening. So with my future videos, I'm going to go ahead and make a little bit of a shift there. It's going to take a few weeks. I do have a few videos lined up currently. I'm going to be working on certain types of practices, especially those that relate to meditative techniques. And it's going to take some time. There's going to be a bit of animation involved because the information that is shared has two perspectives, at least two perspectives, right? The first person and the third person experience. As you're watching me right now, as you're watching this live stream and listening to me, you're getting a third person account of my experience. As I'm giving this live stream right now and watching myself do it, I'm getting a first person account of my own experience. You need both of these to really get a good handle on correct practice. Most of the time what happens is people will read certain literatures or listen to certain teachers or people, and then they have to put in the practice themselves and sort of listen and try to figure it out for themselves. But if you had a direct visual, that would be much easier. And as it turns out, it's very difficult to explain a lot of things related to the psychology of awakening because much of the process is itself nonverbal, right? If you're trying to take something nonverbal and explain it verbally, you're going to run into challenges. For anyone who has gone through certain types of meditation or altered states of consciousness, good luck trying to explain that to people, right? An example that anyone can sit with, if you are trying to explain your dream to somebody, pretty much everybody dreams, right? It's an altered state of consciousness. If you try to explain your dream to somebody, they're going to sort of get it. They might intellectualize it a little bit, but that direct first person experience, it's unique to yourself. So in that sense, I'm going to try to give a first-person account in terms of what you can use for yourself. Again, it's going to take a few videos to do this, but I'll work on it and I'll try to get something up and running so that people can benefit from it. As far as I've seen other channels, pretty much anywhere else, I really haven't seen anyone do what I have in mind. And that to me makes me think it's worth sharing this information because people can certainly benefit from it. So again, that'll take a few weeks, but I'll be working on that. And again, if anyone has any questions here, feel free to ask anything. I'm going to be a little bit shorter today with my live stream, just with holidays and whatnot. We're all kind of busy, but I'm also going to be filming some of those videos I'm talking about in terms of direct practice. The first video I'm going to do, it's going to involve meditative approaches. That's what I'm going to focus on because it's readily accessible to everybody. It's relatively safe and it's very gradual in terms of what you can do, right? If somebody goes and they take psychedelics or try some kind of extreme method, you might go from 0 to 100 and not really understand what happens. Or you might have problems and then keep yourself from progressing further. So with the meditative approaches, we're going to first start with the basics of meditation. I think this is skipped over a little bit too much. Even the definition for what meditation involves, that's confusing for some people. They think you need to go and sit under a waterfall perhaps and, put your hands in a certain way and chant. Sure, you can do those things, but at its heart, meditation is about concentrating your attention towards a specified goal, desire, task, whatever it is you want to call it. So when we hone our attention through meditative practices, we can better direct our psychological functions to understand reality in a more effective manner. That is essentially what we're doing. And as it turns out, when we engage in the types of meditative practices that I'm going to teach, they do induce altered states of consciousness. Now, again, this isn't any kind of magic or supernatural thing. It's actually something natural that people experience. Even in your day-to-day life, you experience altered states of consciousness. We don't just have a singular state, the waking state that we're in right now, or that I'm in right now. That's just a very surface level experience for the entire spectrum of what is available in terms of dimensions of consciousness. It's important to go through altered states of consciousness and dimensions of consciousness because they give us access to information that we otherwise don't have. And as it turns out, with the psychology of awakening, you can't really get to these levels from intellectual analysis alone. If it was as easy as reading a book and just getting it, many people would be at this point by now, but that really is not the case. It's actually kind of the opposite. The more you do that, the more you try to intellectualize, parse down information, and kind of get it in terms of language and knowledge, the more you hinder yourself in terms of getting further through altered states of consciousness, building those insights that we've talked about in other videos, and getting that more cohesive understanding for how reality operates. Instead of explaining that like I'm doing right now, which I could probably do for hours, and maybe people would get it, but they wouldn't really get the direct practice. So instead of doing that with these future videos, I'm not going to talk as much as I am right now. Truly the best way I think to teach others about this stuff is through direct practice. I don't want to sit and talk back and forth for hours. YouTube kind of makes you do that, but I'm going to try to show more of the nonverbal direct aspects. What we find, at least what I found in my practice when I was learning these things, is you'll go through books, you'll listen to teachers, and you will hear different things, but what you get at best is a description, right? They're kind of describing the experience. It's very abstract. If I just had a camera that I could put inside the person's head and see what it is they're talking about from their own perspective, that would be so much more helpful. I'm going to try to do that for you all so that you can see directly what it is that these different states look like, right? When you understand that, it gives you a better map on how to do these kinds of practices for yourself. Do one, see one, teach one, perhaps kind of like that. That's sort of what we're going for here. So I'll leave that for future videos. I don't want to spend too much time on just discussing what I'm going to be doing, but I will be focusing more on the practice component. I just wanted to emphasize that because I have gotten quite a few people who have had more interest in the practices as opposed to just the knowledge piece, right? Perhaps when people hear certain things, especially within this channel, it sounds really abstract or it's difficult to understand. When you do the practices, especially as I'm going to teach them in this channel, it should click. That's what I found for myself as well. When I took the approach of doing the practices first and then looking at things later to kind of fill in the gaps, better understand what it is that was going on, that was much easier. Beforehand, it's kind of like if you read in a very advanced medical textbook, right? You might get some information there, but most of it, it's just going to kind of pass through your head. It's going to go in one ear, out the other. You don't really have the experience to have that holistic, cohesive understanding of what it is that's going on. It's the same kind of thing here. You might read certain scriptures, you might read certain spiritual traditions. A lot of that stuff probably isn't going to make full sense until you have the experiential component for yourself. So I'm going to put more emphasis on that, and then we'll see how it pans out with people, the type of feedback we get. Overall, I want to give information that's useful for people. And most importantly, I want to give practices that people can do for themselves so that they can validate and verify what we're talking about this in this channel and what people are pointing to in terms of spiritual practices. So I'll go ahead and just leave it there. I was planning on a shorter live stream today. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer. I'll probably return back to scientific literature, psychological studies, or whatever it is that people want for future live streams, but this one will be a little bit shorter as well. Are there any questions before I close things out? It's going to be much shorter today. We'll give it a few seconds here. I know it takes some time to type things out. All right, I'm not seeing anything, so I'll go ahead and just call it there. Again, I'll return back to probably full live streams, 1 hour. I'm still seeing what the ideal time frame is for people. Perhaps 1 hour is too long for attention span, maybe 30 minutes, kind of experiment and see from there. But yeah, we'll go ahead and call it there. Happy Thanksgiving, and I will see you next week.